Hey, what's up, everybody? Time for the sort of game theory, sort of fighting game community commentary. If you like the videos, like, subscribe to the comment, share, support the channel if you want. Appreciate it. Thanks. I'm late to this, but I guess there's this whole thing that Daigo said Street Fighter 6 is scrubby or some shit. Or I'm not familiar with what the nerd lingo is for fighting games in Japanese. I only know random stuff, so I don't know. I'm actually just going to focus on basically that I think watching the video, this is a whole bunch of fucking cope. To be honest, I think it's a whole bunch of cope and people just can't call things out for how they are. Because I kind of want to focus on a couple points, basically. Because the idea that Street Fighter 6 is scrubby because you can't prove your actual skill in short matches, I think is a very sort of rose-colored, filtered glasses kind of view of video games in general. Because instantly when I thought of this, I'm like, is he going to try to use Super Turbo as an example, which I guess he did, right? Because Super Turbo, oh, well, you can't prove you're good at Super Turbo unless you play longer sets because you can just jump over a fireball and automatically win, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, here's my argument for that. What fighting game could you, let's say, not say is more important to play longer matches and longer sets? I couldn't tell you. I think you could use that game for even CVS2. Is CVS2 not a game? Just because it takes a long time to do doesn't mean that CVS2 CVS2 you can't prove you're more skillful than someone in a longer set. Also, the thing is, I just feel like you could pick it's like a fucking Swiss cheese argument of just being able to pick so many holes in it instead of just saying the problem with fucking video games nowadays, right? What about this? You think longer sets automatically prove you're better. Well, let's say me for an example, I recently played Mike Watson in Street Fighter Alpha 1, right? Both me and him, I would assume he doesn't practice, you know what I mean? Certainly, it looks like he plays more video games still regularly than I do, but, for sake of argument, though, I would say we are both competent at the game, right? Now, even though we are both competent at the game, if you've watched our replays, we have both gone on win streaks versus each other, right? So let's say if it wasn't a 2 out of 3 tournament. Well, what if someone just took this random set where I beat Mike Watson 5 times in a row? Took another random set where I beat him 5 times in a row, some bullshit like that. Would you automatically say, oh, I'm automatically, so much better than Mike Watson or some shit like that? And it's like, well, what if you watch other sets and you're like, oh, he beat Clayton 5 times in a row before as well? It's shit like that, right? So it's like a fucking Swiss cheese argument because guess what? When people are, even when you get to a, let's say, higher level, let's say a more competent level, let's use that, guess what? Win streaks still happen. You know what? Even in a longer set, you know what I mean? Someone might be using this gimmick against you. Gimmicks don't only exist in short matches. Now you could say the gimmick, certainly you could say, let's say, and this is more Swiss cheese coping arguments. You could say like, oh, well, it's easier to use a gimmick versus someone in a 2 out of 3. Well, you could use the gimmick versus them too. Maybe you could say, oh, well, you're not skillful because you didn't use your gimmick there or something. You weren't ready for that gimmick. It's just so fucking, again, Swiss cheese argument, dude. And I can't tell you any game that I can think of that you couldn't just say like, oh, well, it should be a longer set. It feels like a sort of coping mechanism to, well, I would have beat you if I would have done this. I would have beat you if I would have done this. You know what I mean? It's not a very good argument if you think about it. It's a sort of coping mechanism to say, I don't feel comfortable. I don't want to like actually say the problems with this game or something like that. Because if we think about the word scrubby, when I think about the word scrubby, and if that's the word he used or some shit like that, I actually don't know. Again, I don't know the lingo for Japanese, Street Fighter terms and all this kind of stuff, besides very basic knowledge, right? But if we're going by the idea that scrubby is, when I think of the word scrubby, I think of something that is easy to do, but effective, right? Easy to do, but effective. For the ease of use of what you are doing, it is very effective. That doesn't necessarily that it means it's not necessarily skillful. You know what I mean? but again, something that is, for what you're doing, it is reasonably powerful, let's say, right? So if we're thinking about Street Fighter 6, I'm like, oh, it's so volatile, oh, fuck, I got drive rushed here, oh, I got throw looped here, whatever fucking bullshit you're saying. Why don't you just say that the game has problems? Why don't you just admit that if we are thinking that the word scrubby means something that is easy to do, that is reasonably more effective than maybe it should be for its ease of use, let's say, why don't you just admit that fighting games should not be making things easier? Isn't that what you're getting at? Your coping mechanism. And this, and I'm not saying, and obviously I agree that I think fighting games should be more skillful. I don't think things should be easy. But what I'm saying is that you could actually take the argument that you're just using a coping mechanism, right? Why don't you just say that, like, I don't think, games should be adding all these easy things in. You should not be able to compete with me doing something so easy. You shouldn't be able to mash on moves to get combos. And this just gets to, you shouldn't be able to, like I said, it's just, the game should not be so pre-planned out. We've talked about the problems of Street Fighter 6, how it's going to turn out. And I'm like, is this going to be Cliff Notes? And I've said before, the fucking nerd community, they want everyone to feel like they changed. Like I said, when I got into video games, growing up, they always told you that the best people at video games were the people that were maybe super fat, lots of pimples, glasses, that kind of nerdy guy. He was going to be the best at video games. And I always said, it's so ridiculous. It's ridiculous to say the same shit over and over because it never fucking changes, right? Most people cannot talk about a video game well, and most people are not actually good at a video game. And it's very rare to meet both. So even if you met a nerd that was actually, he could talk about a game, which is rare enough, God forbid, could he actually play? You know what I mean? And so what they did, this progression of video games, I said before, he used, like I said, let's talk about it. It's actually just fucking proving what I'm saying, right? Daigo used Super Turbo as an example. And I've talked about before, back in the day, people, when they would try to complain, they said simple of things had too much of an influence on a match. Did I not say that? Have I not made videos and talked about this for years and years? Daigo, whatever, he said, you can jump over fireball instantly win. People tried to complain that in old school Street Fighter, simple things had too much of an influence on matches. And people tried to say, oh, that's scrubby. I even used examples. People just complained that, oh, you could walk up, throw me, or walk up, dragon punch. That's too simple. And so what they did, combos started becoming more important. Okay? In fucking video games, because they're like, oh, just these simple combos, just these simple mix-ups were too powerful. So combos started becoming more important in Street Fighter. But guess what? The nerd, that Jimmy, got mad because he saw, oh, well, fuck. Now that simple things are having less of an influence on the match, now I actually still got to learn how to do combos, and combos still take skill. I still got to react to this shit. You know what I mean? Well, that's not good. I need every combo to be easy and mashable. You know what I mean? Oh, fuck, well, I gotta do easy and mashable combos. Well, fuck, oh, can you change the properties of moves? It's just a fucking coping mechanism with the FGC on EBC. You know what I mean? People always coming up with excuses, and you keep listening to the jimmies, so to speak, and you eventually get games where it's a literal, you can just read the cliff notes of the match before you play. Like I said, it was whatever, the last generation of video games, you start seeing it in Street Fighter 5, whatever, all this kind of stuff. Something that used to be just a fucking 3D sort of mindset, let's say, of people reading their phone or, reading the cliff notes. This move's plus here, this move's minus here, plus here, minus here, plus here, minus there. You know what I mean? Refreshing, you know what I mean? Because guess what? They want to take the human element out of games. You know what I mean? People don't want to admit that there's that guessing factor. You have to guess. You have to make proper decisions. You know what I mean? They want to take out, it's like, okay, I'm automatically, it's like a fucking GED test for a fucking video game. You go and get a GED. You're just smart enough to pass the test. You're just smart enough to pass, so you're just smart enough to prove that you are, fucking smart enough to survive in society, right? Just like an example, you could say, not all doctors are good doctors. Some doctors just do good enough to pass the test. I don't remember exactly how the phrase is. It's like, you ask somebody, it's like, well, what is the last if you are trying to be a surgeon and you ask somebody, what happens to the person that finishes last in his class in his surgery class, but he still passes? Last in his class still passes. He still gets his fucking diploma that he can do surgery on your fucking face or whatever, right? You know what I mean? Hopefully you get what I'm getting at there, right? Nowadays, video games always want, instead of failing you for not being good enough, failing you for not having the execution to do something, failing you for not having the combos to do something, now they automatically pass you if you can pass that GED test of the video game. Oh, well, I know this is plus here, this is minus here. Oh, I know I can just mash on drive rush here, you know what I mean? Whatever the fuck. Slimer here, Slimer there, blah, 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 blah. So the point is, Daigo, whoever it is, saying like, oh, well, you can't prove you're actually skillful in a 2 out of 3 match. What game can you prove? I'm serious. What game can you prove? Because it's a Swiss cheese argument, dude. You need to call out the games for what they are. You need to call out the games that this is bullshit. You know what I mean? This is making the game bad. You shouldn't like I said, a game, look at a game. It's funny, isn't it, that a game, I think if you look at a game like Street Fighter 6 at face value, you would think that it is so much more magically complicated than Super Turbo, right? But then look at this. You have people that are, and I guess I'm making videos about it too, but I just like, I just like proving I'm right all the time. What can I say? But you have people making all these videos. Oh, Daigo said it's scrubby too. That's why I lose. I just lose because it's scrubby. I lose because it's scrubby. Blue, blue, blue. Daigo said it too. I lose because it's scrubby. We can't just say Street Fighter 6 is a bad game. You know what I mean? And how fighting games are developed are bad. It's just scrubby. It's scrubby. It's ignorant. Whatever. I don't fucking know. Do you get what I'm getting at, dude? It's just like, it's a rose-colored glass argument, Swiss cheese argument. It's like, yeah, it's nice to believe that, if this game was always more rounds, it would automatically be more skillful because only the best would win. Guess what? I went on big win streaks, against people before that are supposedly good. So what does that fucking mean? Does that automatically mean I'm the greatest player ever? You know what I mean? It's just ridiculous. You could actually say, guess what? What about, you could say, to win a tournament now, you must always have to go through all your toughest matches in the tournament. If this character counters you, you have to prove you can beat every character in the game, that you are automatically the best at this knowledge of matchups. You have to prove you're good at all your good matches, all your bad matches. You got to verse a bunch of people, same character matchup, all that kind of stuff. I mean, in tournaments, is there not times like, oh, that guy got an easy ride to the finals? He didn't have to verse any of the counter characters that character has to fight, anything like that. You know what I mean? He had an easy ride. That happens in tournaments too. Does that make him automatically scrubby because he got that? I mean, of course, from a certain perspective, it feels unfair. I can understand. But guess what? Like I said, the point is, dude, you could look at video games through so many ways and poke through so many holes of that it has to be a longer match, because I just think it's not looking at the bigger picture. It just seems like coping to me. It's like, God, like, what about when a person gets an easy bracket? Is that scrubby? He kind of scrubbed it out. Scrubbed it out with that bracket, you know what I mean? I don't know, dude. Like I said, it's not very impressive what I'm reading and seeing. Because, again, it could go for any game, You could even say, guess what, though? How about this? Just to play devil's advocate here, guess what? Why does the match have to be long? What if you're Clayton Chapman? What if you've had surgery on your hands? What if you got nerve damage throughout your body? What if you live your life in and out of a hospital? Maybe I'm mentally fatigued. Maybe I don't like playing long sets because I'm fucking hurting. You know what I mean? I don't have the mental fatigue. I've actually said it before. Guess what? The reason I don't play a lot of fucking video games, and a lot of times when I play video games, if I do, it's just like, oh, I'll just play like for 15 minutes here, a little bit here, a little bit there, right? Because guess what? It's, and again, I've said this in videos before. I'm one of those people that, you know, it's hard for me to get warmed up because I don't play a lot. But then once I start to get warmed up, there's that sort of, you know, kind of even balance of, well, I'm getting warmed up, but I can't use my fingers for that long, dude. I can't, you know? It's kind of like a catch-22. I'm damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? Can't really practice. You know what I mean? Can't play for long enough to get warmed up half the time if I wanted to, so to speak, you know? What about that? Are you gonna completely redo a tournament? Are you gonna make a whole tournament just because of Clayton Chapman? You know what I mean? Be like, oh yeah, Clayton doesn't count until he gets warmed up because he doesn't practice, you know? And only the matches when Clayton is warmed up count. You know? Are you gonna do that? Of course you're not gonna fucking do that. You motherfuckers have left me for dead at a tournament before. You motherfuckers say that I lied about all this shit. Of course you're not gonna do that. So the point is, why don't you just call out the game and the community for what they are? You keep making these fucking shitty games, and you know, you don't want to like actually admit that a video game is like, there's a human element to it. It's not a fucking computer. Not all nerds are meant to be good at video games, you know? So again, what is skill? What is scrubby? You know what I mean? It's kind of ambiguous in a way, and from how it's like being phrased here, I think, you know? Because it's kind of like, well, geez, you could say that's scrubby. You could say that's skillful, you know? Do you know what I'm getting at? Anyway, the end.